These are actual nail heads on railroad spikes. They have them from like 1917 to 1985 or something.
Cool.
We have a hypothesis, right, that there are a number of mistakes or lies that entrepreneurs tell themselves when they start a business. And some of that's perpetuated by what the current paradigm is or the current conventional thinking. And a lot of that's perpetuated by current service providers or the SBA or anything like that. So, the SBA has this list of the 10 things that entrepreneurs should do or people wanting to start their own business that they should do. None of it has anything to do with enhancing their product or starting, to sell something. It's just all this paperwork and tax information.
Yeah, because that's the best use of their time, obviously.
Right. It's not creating a product or a service and then going to find a customer. It's fill out the paperwork, do a business plan, find a location. I mean, some of that stuff is important if you're, I assume, a restaurant or something like that, but it's not do all this administrative paperwork that takes months or weeks on end to do. And then the other thing that was interesting is if you want to start a business, you should go get training to start a business.
Well, I think that's they've got a lot of services that they need to push at the SBA and keep people busy, but at the same time, obviously a lot of the entrepreneurs that we're working with have put a lot of thought into what their business is. Mm-hmm. And I think once they get to that point of deciding that, hey, here's my idea, here's my way I'm going to be different in the marketplace, and then I've made the decision to launch this business and commit my time and my personal wealth and perhaps other people's personal wealth to this venture. The best use of the time isn't those administrative things you're talking about, and that's kind of ultimately why we started down the path with Miga, was to take some of those things off people's plates. So, if we can get to, I guess if we wrote that list, it'd probably be, make that decision to go forward. Somewhere along the way, we hope they call us to take all those other things, but the next two steps really are improve that product and find somebody to sell it to. And for the most part, those are the two steps that we hope people repeat,
right,
and that's the most successful businesses.
Well, one of the, I think that gets into one of the mistakes or lies that entrepreneurs would tell themselves, which is, I've got this idea, I've got this product or whatever, and I'm going to start this, but I've got to do all of this. I have to do all of this myself. I have to design the product. I got to find the customers, those are probably true, but I have to go source an accountant or go buy QuickBooks. I've got to be the tax expert and the HR expert and all that stuff and do it in my garage. And, here at Miga, I think we have a slightly different approach on that, in that we don't know, the passion and drive that you have for your product or service, but we know all those administrative things that actually will keep you from doing that passion and drive for your product or service. You probably didn't, unless you're an accountant, you probably didn't get in business to do accounting. You probably don't understand the accounting, and you don't understand the payroll taxes, or you don't understand the city licensing, and those are types of services at Miga that we could actually set you up with from the beginning that will take some burden off of you and allow you to focus on the product or service that you're starting.
So, the first thing that people often we hear as kind of what clients are telling themselves, and we call it the lies they tell themselves, but the first thing is like, we're not big enough for that. So it's always something that when we get to some certain size, those things will be appropriate. And reality is that I think that was probably the mindset and just the practical answer, 10, 20 years ago, when there weren't solutions that people have that could scale from really zero on up. So there's lots of challenges with are we big enough to do that?
Right.
And many reasons why there the expectations of a smaller company as it relates to regulation, as it relates to taxes, as it relates to banking, as it relates to judging the performance of that business are virtually the same as if you're a $100,000 revenue company or a $100 million company.
That's right. And back in the, say, 15 or 20 years ago, if you wanted to put in an HR system, and your choices were fairly limited. It had to be a server-based environment. You had to have somebody sit there and maintain it. You had to have the programming. You had a big. It's a big investment. But with today's cloud-based technology, you can get into something for very little investment, and that's kind of the what Miga has done, which is take these services and administrative tasks that need to perform, create a solution around those, a service solution around those that leverages technology and our people, not your people, and allow you to have this world-class environment, whether it be HR systems, payroll, accounting, management, reporting, to drive your business and understand your results, as opposed to spending your time and energy yourself or your resources and cash on putting in these systems that need to be maintained by you, the business owner.
So the system side has changed quite a bit in the last decade or so with different forms of technology, but the people side is somewhat the same. And to a certain extent, young entrepreneurs, new businesses are correct when they say that they're not big enough on the people side, because it's not if you look at your typical business and you say, well, I want to have someone in-house to do these things, the things such as managing your HR environment, such as providing bookkeeping and accounting advice services, a CFO kind of service, such as keeping track of all of your corporate records and things, such as doing payroll, all the things that we think of as the things that we try to take off of people's plates. We did some brief calculations and suggested that if you need all those resources and you want to spend kind of a best practice level benchmark on those resources, and you need maybe backup for those resources so that you're not completely dependent on one person, you very quickly get to a level that is somewhere between $8 to $10 million in revenue before you should even think of trying to do these things in-house.
And at that level of 8 to 10 million, then it is a different story. But I think as you're growing your business and you're understanding the levels and complexities, you think you need an accountant, you think you need a bookkeeper, you need a controller, you need a CFO, but you don't need those people all the time. As you're growing your business, you need a time, and there's a question that you have that says, I really wish I had some advice on how to affect this transaction or how to structure this debt or whatever the case may be. So, at Amiga, what we do is allow you to consume those resources when you need them, but not have to pay for them all the time as if they were on your staff. And the other side of that with Amiga is that the fees that you're charged, your monthly fee, includes all of that advice at no additional charge. So there is no hourly fee. So you call us the first day and you say, look, I need to structure some debt. You call us the second day and say, look, I'm looking to take a lease on a building. The third day, it's all included in your monthly fee. So there is no additional surprise. There's no hourly rates. You consume those resources. We're there to help you as you need them. And you can call us every day. Don't call us twice a day, but no.
So the other kind of the second lie, I think, compounds this, that people talk about, that we're just not big enough. But the second message is that we can do that later.
Yeah.
And you can, but our experience has been that doing it later takes about 3 times as long and at least twice as much money.
That's right.
To clean things up versus starting from the beginning, doing it right, doing it small, and letting it grow with your business.
Yeah, I think we've all been, there's a, inside joke with accountants and tax professionals that at the end of the year, they all have these clients that show up and they've got they call them the shoebox job. So the client comes in and has, all the canceled checks, all the bank statements, all the records from, probably not all the records, but maybe half the records of the business for the year, and says, here you go. My bank needs this income statement and balance sheet, and I need to do a tax return. So, just call me when you're finished. Well, that's as you said, that's a very hard task to do. You're not sure you have complete records. You're not sure, and frankly, the end product of that is probably not as good. So, I think entrepreneurs and people doing startups say, well, I'll take care of it later. I'll do it later, but in our view, doing it right from the beginning, having it set up correctly, not only ensures that you have the right financial information and you have the right tax information, but you're getting the best information to run your business at a cost that is very minor as it relates to the benefit that you're getting from the service. So a startup from our in our service, for as little as a couple $100s a month, can have all their tax records, all their bank records, everything maintained for them, and so that you don't have that shoebox at the end. You don't have that unknown as to what this is going to cost me. You already have that figured out.
So that other lie that they tell each other, kind of again building on the last one, was that we won't get caught. We can do it later if we won't get caught.
Yeah.
And perhaps, but often people do, and the cleanup costs of doing things after the fact is one element, but the compliance costs, the fines, mm-hmm. How many times have we taken over a particular client and they soon send us I got this certified letter. It's never good. It's never good.
No. I don't even want to open it so I can email it to you. It's scary for a small business, and the reason, and it's scary. Well, I would say it's scary for anybody, but I think the reason that they get themselves in that position is that they weren't proactive in handling these, whatever it may be, payroll taxes, income taxes, business licenses, state registrations. I mean, there's so many things that a small business owner needs to take care of that, frankly, if they're out there doing what they're supposed to be doing, they don't have time to do it.
Right.
I mean, they should be out there selling their product. I mean, if their livelihood is dependent upon, how much they personally can sell and and leading their organization, they don't really have, I don't think it's at top of mind that they should say, oh, my payroll taxes are due today, or wonder if my business registration with the state is current, or do I have my current city's licensing? I mean, those things fall through the cracks, and frankly,
it's really easy to do.
It is really easy to do, and the cost of compliance, like you said, is small compared to the cost of rectifying a mistake.
Right.
In both time and dollars.
We always talk about wanting those things that are the everyday things to be just like breathing, right? Mm-hmm. Those are, you don't want to go around thinking about breathing. You want those things just to be done. Mm-hmm. You want those things to get done proactively, and to not have to worry about them and not have them hanging over your head, so that you can, again, focus on the two most important things, which are making a better product and selling it every day.
Right. One of the other things that are small businesses, the way they run their business is basically out of their checkbook. So, the joke is, I must be making money. I have a positive balance in my checkbook. And to some degree, that's true, I think. But one of the services that we can provide in that regard is that as we account for these transactions on a daily basis, we can tell the small business owner exactly what his cash position is, exactly what his AR, his accounts receivable or accounts payable position is as well. So there's a little peace of mind knowing that, did I write that check in there? Did I not do it? I mean, we account for those on a daily basis. So if there's a situation that you need to know, you can go onto our website, pull up your site on us, give us a call, whatever the case is, and we can let you know immediately. where you sat in that position, which is, I think, a big peace of mind for a lot of small business owners.
Yeah, I think a very different mindset than for us versus potentially other approaches that people take, which is that we want things to be up to date every day,
Right.
and that the information should have value to you in running your business, making decisions today, not just being something I have to do at the end of the year, because I have to do a tax return.
Right. Well, the paradigm is currently is I got my bank statement in the mail. I need to send that off to my accountant or bookkeeper. They're going to give me a financial statement that has no explanation to it whatsoever. It's just a bunch of numbers on a page, and they send it back to me and say, "Here's your bill." And it's completely different than the way we think our clients want to interact with us, which is, we account for their transactions. We provide that management information and financial information so that at any given time they can make an important business decision or just understand how they're doing as a business. It doesn't have to be the end of the month. It doesn't have to be the end of the year. It's available for them to consume anytime they want.
Right. And whether that's financial records or operational kind of information, I think it's real important to find the right balance between the financial results, whether that's the cash flow of the business or whether that's the financial accounting view for taxes view of the business. But it's also important to understand what we're producing in terms of what is that getting us, how efficient are we, how effective are we in the sales process, and to look at that in comparison to other organizations. Most importantly, I think one of the things that we try to orient all of our clients as we give them advice on is to the margins, right? That's the thing that people really need to understand, much more importantly about their business. What are their margins, particularly for a growing business, particularly for a new business, versus what's my profitability?
Yeah. One of the things that, as you were speaking, I was going back to the comment that you had earlier, which was, we can do this later. And a great war story of one of our current clients, if we can do this later, was they were thinking about it in putting in a contract tracking system. And they, not big enough, didn't have enough time, whatever the case may be. And one of their largest customers called them at the end of the year and said, well, per our contract, we've exceeded our revenues or amount that we paid you guys, your revenues from us. So we would like our 20% rebate to the tune of $300,000 back.
Right.
So
surprise,
surprise. And that's one of the services that we offer at Miga, is that we take those contracts, whether it be your lease or your customer contracts, significant vendor contracts, loans, whatever, and put those in our system with the tracking metadata and time frames and what have you to understand what the financial and compliance ramifications of those are, so that when when it says once I pass $500,000, 20% rebate kicks in, we make you aware of that before those situations arise. So once again, the cost of compliance a lot less than the financial surprise of the big bill. Miga provides the payroll and payroll tax service for our clients. As a small business owner, if you're doing it yourself, you have to understand that the federal requirements for filing payroll taxes, there's state requirements for filing payroll taxes. In the city of St. Louis or other municipalities across the country, there are local requirements for filing payroll taxes. They all have different due dates, they all have different forms, they all have different requirements on how to submit. With our clients, that's all taken care of. So we run payroll for you, your employees get paid, the payroll taxes are scheduled appropriately, and those are remitted on your behalf through us.
So I think the fourth lie we've always talked about is that we can't afford that. And what I think in the past, many organizations couldn't afford this service because, as we talked a little bit about before, it was the entry point was so high for each component that all of a sudden you're paying a minimum amount for somebody to do your payroll. You're paying a minimum amount for somebody to do your taxes. You're paying a minimum amount for bookkeeping. You're paying a minimum amount for each of the applications. And even on the technology side, that minimum was quite high.
Yes.
I mean, it could have been tens of thousands of dollars
Right.
for different organizations. On the technology side, that's come down tremendously, but it's still, in an individual company, they can be a high initial entry point of a few $100s in many cases,
Right.
just for each of those pieces. What we've tried to do is bundle all those together so that we can create get efficiencies in that minimum entry point, and that the clients can use the services that make sense for them, and they can use them starting in essence at zero and scaling up.
Right.
As they grow, the services just grow with them, and they grow at a more and more efficient rate in terms of the fees that we charge. I don't know that anybody else is doing it this way that we've seen in the marketplace. So,
A couple of examples on that. And we've had a couple of clients that have been very successful with us, and they started out as just this sole proprietor, the one person who has their business and doesn't have employees. So there is no payroll, there is no really HR component to their business. And as they got more successful, they hired their first employee, which is a big deal. It's very scary for small businesses to do that because of all the payroll issues and the compliance issues. But our service allows them to hire that first employee, to take on that responsibility and to take on that big step as a business, and really not worry about it. We take care of all that information, and the incremental cost to that business is significantly less than even going out and doing and buying their own payroll service and having to do that information and input all that information themselves. And I think that cost it's too expensive for us. One of the things that small business owners and entrepreneurs don't realize is the cost of them doing all this themselves too.
Right.
I mean, it takes a significant amount of time, if you think about it, to account for your daily transactions, and to account for your payroll, and to manage your contracts, and to manage your customers, and to manage your vendors. And there are certain pieces of that are very value added to the small business, but there's a lot of that is just administrative. You have to do it. It's not an optional activity, but the business owner's time could be spent doing things that are much more valuable to that business, as opposed to those have to do's, not like to do's.
yeah, it compounds. You're not hiring new people because you're sitting around, you don't have enough to do. You're usually hiring new people because you're growing. In the case of the example I think you're referring to, going from doing services out of someone's, in essence, home to opening a store and a retail operation and growing the business very, very aggressively.
Right. And the quote that we got from that individual is, before I hired you guys, I was spending all my time doing all these things that I really didn't want to do, wasn't qualified to do, and frankly wasn't doing them correctly and on time. So by hiring us to do that, it allowed her to focus on her business, focus on what she likes to do, and leave the rest to us, and take that worry, take that burden, take that work effort off of her plate. No pun intended. And she's a caterer, by the way. And focus on growing her business, which 2014 is going to be a great year for her, actually. So. Well, there's really no business that is too small. I think a lot of times we'll run into that. I'm just too small to hire you guys, and that's not necessary. I mean, it's absolutely not true.
In fact, there's a requirement for the way we designed our services, is
Right.
that it needs to work for someone who is a sole proprietor and values their time enough to recognize that they can make better use of that time dealing with their client than they can some of the administrative stuff. So,
Right.
so we have minimum entry points for startups and sole proprietors that really start at a couple $100s a month, and then as their business gets bigger, or not, it's scaled to the size of their operation. We truly believe that the best use of a business owner's time is not doing the things that we do. It is absolutely working with their client, being in the marketplace, working with their product to improve it, direct management of their employees if they have them, to get the most out of those resources and to improve, again, the services they offer to their client. The things that we as Miga do for them, they should be consumers of that information, not creators of that information. So that's our whole philosophy in terms of how we provide services to folks and how we continue to try to improve our services to them.
There's a lot of ways Miga enters into an organization. There's probably three scenarios. One is a startup business. They've never done anything like this before. They don't really know all the things that they're supposed to do, and we can help them guide that way. There's also on the other end of the spectrum, there's a more mature business that probably has some resources, whether they're external resources or internal resources, that are currently performing some of these tasks that Miga does. And the third situation is a growing business that is kind of in the middle. So, I'm big enough now where I really know I need these things. I don't know whether to have that internal resource to do this or hire external providers to do that. In every case, Miga's services and the pricing for those services, I think we found to be better than what the individual could go out and buy in the marketplace on their own. And I think it's a better product. It's more complete services, and at a cost that you could not really afford to even get one of those services for, whether it be an internal accountant or a external bookkeeper.
Yeah, we try to save people money in every case, but at the same time, we're very much about getting them enhanced information to make better decisions, or to free up that time from off the owner's plate, and to allow them to focus on those key elements of the business that are really going to make them more money and going to determine the success of their business.
Right.
It's a real challenge. We keep talking about these things that they shouldn't do, and it's difficult, because the things they should be doing are the going out and getting the new revenue, improving their product. All those things are critical to the success. At the same time, a lot of the failure in businesses is also because of a few mistakes, and that they don't have their arms around some of the key operational things, and they don't understand how they're consuming cash, and they don't understand their margins and those kinds of issues. We want them to focus on understanding that information, making decisions on that information, not necessarily creating that information.
Right. So one of the tools that we have on our website, which I think a lot of small businesses and entrepreneurs could actually use, is to go out and understand the cost, of what doing these services internally or externally, or combination of both, whether it be owner performed or have other resources to do. So we have a tool on our website called the Benefits Calculator.
The idea behind this benefits calculator is really, it's almost a benchmarking tool. And what we've done is we looked at a number of different studies out there that different organizations have provided, that looked at the cost of providing HR services and finance, accounting services, payroll, and so on. And we use those factors across a number of things, plus our experience in our own client base, to determine, what do these things typically cost, and what do people typically spend on them, and
the benchmarks with payroll providers and bookkeepers and external CPAs and that whole package of services that either the business owner needs, doesn't know they want, or whatever, but are packaged together and under this benchmarking study. And then we also take into account the owner's time, which I think is always undervalued when it looks at, people are just looking at hard dollars and saying, my bookkeeper's X and my CPA's Y, and I paid my payroll provider Z, but as the business owner in that environment, I still have to provide them all the information, and I still have to do a lot of work to get them that information. So we also include a calculation based on business owners' time spent, and I think that looks at the total package and provides a benefit compared to, if as you select one of our packages, compared to the cost of our services. And
it's really misleading as well when you look at the technology. I love there's some great technologies out there today, and these organizations have developed some tools that are so much better than they were in the past. The problem, though, is that you still have to put the information in.
Right.
It's great they show you the reports that come out of the system, but those reports are only there if someone is actually, as we talk about, feeding the beast, right? Making sure that the information that goes in is timely, complete, accurate, and then you can use that information. So that's a lot of what we focus on is doing that component. So, and it goes into the cost. What we saw in the benchmarking is that there's a lot of hidden kind of time associated with those activities. So what we ask people to do along 7 or 8 different functions is to go and tell us, is this something that you do? Is this something you hire somebody internally to do? Do you have an outside provider that provides this component of the service, or some combination thereof? And by those, we've built some algorithms that predict what the average costs were for organizations, and we've found it to be quite accurate.
Right.
Any organization can vary very substantially based on their own performance, but at the same time, I think this gives people a very good idea of what they're typically going to be spending on the services around finance and records management and HR and payroll and so on.
One of the things that it highlighted as we were putting this together that highlighted for me was a lot of the different components. And one of our typical clients would have things that these components that they would need to feed. So they would have a banking accounting function that they needed to make sure was reconciled and up to date. They would have a payroll component that needs to be input, processed, and then taxes paid. They would have an HR record keeping component that they need to maintain so that they're in compliance with all the federal, state, and local regulations. They're going to have some kind of system, whether it's a big stack of papers on the corner of somebody's desk or a filing cabinet or whatever it is, that manages their corporate records, whether that be official corporate records, so state registrations and board minutes and those things, or practical information such as contracts or leases, or that. How many times have we contact our clients and say, where's the current, you guys just signed a new client, where's the contract for that client? And somebody says, I don't have the signed copy. Right. I've got a draft copy. Well, that's a lot of businesses run that way, where they don't have the actual copy. Somebody's got it in their briefcase. But you start adding up all those components of either technology or record keeping or filing, and it really highlights how much administrative work really needs to go into running a business, and somebody needs to manage that. And whether you hire somebody internally or have it pieced out externally, I think you're looking at a very significant risk of non-compliance and and creating corporate risk for not having that buttoned down.
It's also hard for people to go back and forth. It's difficult if you're a business owner to go from dealing with your customer, addressing them from a service standpoint, selling a new product, whatever, to 5 minutes later going to read some notice that came from some jurisdiction about some activities that you need to do for healthcare reform, or things that you need to do because of your particular entity status and so on. It's very difficult to go back and forth between those
typically
things.
that stuff,
people aren't very efficient in doing it that way.
And the stuff that you don't like doing doesn't get done.
The lie, I can do that later.
Yeah, I can do that later. I'll put that off. I know I need to do that, but I'll get to that. I think every client we have, they always talk about it's much more fun to go out and sell a new project or land a new account or whatever. I don't think they ever said, boy, I really hate giving up this payroll processing to you guys.
No.
But those are, small business owners, entrepreneurs. We talked about this. They have to wear many hats. They got to, they think they have to wear all the hats, but in reality, they should only wear a few hats. They should wear the product development hat or the service development hat. They should wear the marketing hat, and focus on those things that are going to drive that top line revenue. And let us help you
improve their margins.
Let us help them understand margins so they can improve their profitability. But focus on those things that they got into business for to begin with, which probably wasn't accounting and HR record keeping, payroll, and corporate records management.
Right.
A lot of times when people are starting a small business, and it's probably the right answer. They don't want to put on employees right away, but they do need help every once in a while. So, you pay your neighbor to help you do something in your business. There's a couple things you need to know. First off, if you pay them under $600 for the whole year, then you don't have to worry about anything. That's the first step. Secondly, though, if you pay them more than $600 a year, then there is a whole laundry list of things you need to worry about. So they're then classified as an outside contractor for your business. You need to get a form from them called a W-9, which collects their information, so name, address, social security number, so that you can then provide that information to the government at the end of the year on a form called a 1099. And that basically, the 1099 explains to the government that you paid an outside contractor an amount greater than $600 a year to perform some services for your business. And that then puts that outside contractor on notice that they need to claim that money on their tax return. Government cross-references all that based on the tax ID number that you provided, your social security number. One of the things that then small businesses fall into the trap of is, well, I don't want to pay payroll taxes on these services that I need, so I'm going to make all of these people that are working for me outside contractors. And the IRS has a list of 21 different items that are considered by them to determine whether an employee or a person is either an employee or a contractor. Some of those items are, if you require the person to show up at your place of employment or place of work every day, they will lean towards that person being an employee. If you have a detailed list of tasks that they need to perform every day or every week, and they are not working independently, but you're supervising them, that person would be considered an employee. But there are, like I said, there's 21 of these that need to be considered, and it's really not. It's not a decision that you can just say, okay, I'm going to call them a contractor, and then I don't have to pay Social Security, my employer portion of the Social Security and Medicare, which is 7-8%. I mean that's an additional amount that you would pay on their, in addition to their salary. That is an expense, but if you had those as all contractors, and then the IRS came in and said they're not really contractors but they're employees, then you would have to pay for not only the 8% that you didn't pay to begin with, but you'd also have penalties and fines. The employee would be subject to all sorts of penalties and fines because of their not filing their taxes appropriately. So it's really it's a very significant issue that really needs to be addressed up front and addressed correctly.
Another thing that small businesses often kind of assume is that, well, this person's just part-time, so I'm treating them as a contractor. Well, that really has nothing to do with it.
That's correct.
I know it seems like it maybe should, that they're part-time, but it really doesn't. They're you either treat them as an employee, whether they work 5 hours a week or 40 hours a week, and you have to abide by the rules related to the IRS as to how you can treat them as a contractor or an employee.
Right. One of the comments we get a lot of is, I really like what you guys have to offer. I really think it's a great service, but I've been with this accountant, our bookkeeper, for a long time, and changing is going to be difficult. First off, that's not true. Changing is very simple for us. We can take whatever your bookkeeper or accountant has as far as your books and records, whatever accounting program they're using, and we can convert that very easily. It's no effort on your part. What most people are concerned about, though, is notifying their existing provider that they're making a change, and that there's going to be a big issue in getting those records from that accountant or bookkeeper. And it's pretty simple. We have a letter that is already drafted for that customer, that client's signature. We provide them that letter, they sign it, and then we just take it from there. We handle all the communication. Once they've signed that letter, we can handle all communication with the prior accountant. We can get all their books and records, and then we can transfer them over. So that's operationally as simple as that. There's probably a lot of signs that would point to that you may want to consider changing accountants. And these are kind of tongue-in-cheek, but if the only time you talk to your accountant is when you hand him that giant envelope of stuff that needs to be turned into a tax return at the end of the year, and then he hands it back to you as a tax return along with the bill, you probably need a new accountant. You're not getting very much service for what you're paying for that there.
Well, I think that's one of the confusing parts, though. People assume that their accountant is their financial advisor as it relates to the broader elements of their business. And the reality is that scenario, your accountant is your tax preparer.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Full stop, beginning and end, they prepare your taxes.
Right.
And that may be fine, but you just need to recognize that's what you're getting from them, as opposed to ongoing service to support, how do you run your business most efficiently on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis.
That's a good point. I mean, we at Miga, we have tax services that are available, but not necessarily do you have to use us. So we can prepare your books and records and provide you with that analytics and financial information. But if you feel comfortable using a third-party tax preparer, that's quite all right. I mean, it's not a prerequisite that we have to do your taxes. However, we are fairly confident that the information that your tax preparer is going to receive is going to be in a significantly better situation than it was prior to coming to Amiga, because we're handling all of this accounting up front and not having to recreate it at the end of the year, where a lot of our clients are in that situation.
Right. No more of that tax organizer that you have to fill out that big envelope that comes in. You got to figure out all of the details, fill in the information so that they can put it in another form and make any adjustments.
Right.
In essence, for our clients that use a separate tax account and tax preparer, we in essence prepare that.
Certainly as it relates to their business.
Right.
I mean, and that's really
Absolutely.
a lot of our clients, a significant portion of their income and wealth is tied up in their business. And it's probably the single largest line item, potentially largest line item from a time to get to the final answer, to put it on that line in the tax return that they're going to have. So if they're using an outside provider or they're using us, I mean, that information has already been summarized. It's already in a tax usable format that can be easily transcribed into whatever tax program or return preparer that they're using.
I think that peace of mind is important. I mean, there's a lot of things to worry about in whether you're a startup or a business that's growing. You've got plenty of things on your plate. You don't need to worry about the stack of information that you need to get to the government. Mm-hmm. So our focus is around taking those worries away and making sure that that you have the right information along the way, so that these questions aren't major events. Mm-hmm. You're generating much of this information as you go along. The challenge is if you don't know what to keep, how to keep it, and make sure that you have the final versions of things, then you end up you spend a lot of time looking for data at the end of the year. So our whole philosophy is to try to get this information, capture it up front, put it in a place where we all know where it is, tag it so that we can find it, and if there's any follow-up kind of activity that's associated with it, we put a date out on it so that it reminds us to do something with it. As you mentioned earlier, Dan, the whole issue of finding the final version, and this kind of gets into a lot of people talk about document retention kinds of issues. Well, to retain something, it's somewhat the easy part. There's systems we can put in place to decide what to do with things from destroying those documents and so on. The problem is, the bigger problem typically is finding the documents in the first place.
Right.
So, and which version of the document? We pass around so many things right now in the course of business that you end up, no one really often knows what's the final, or the final, or the draft final, or the final version number 3.
Right.
So, and who has it, and what system, and what platform. So we try to take a lot of that, and the first step is to get those critical documents in one place, make sure that we have the final document, and then we can talk about what needs to happen to it over the next year or 7 years or 10 years, or things that really need to be permanent records as part of your business.
Well, and we've alluded to a couple of times in the conversation about getting that official notice from the government. A lot of that is, the government loses things too, and having the ability to quickly address whatever that document is. It could be something as simple as, we don't have a receipt of your last payroll tax return. Okay, well, in a lot of instances, that could be a major fire drill for small businesses, because did they take a copy of it? Where'd they put the copy? How did they handle that document? In our situation, it's very simple. I mean, we go out to our service, we click on the payroll tax return, we have the date it was filed, the timestamp it was filed, it was accepted by the IRS. You take a copy of that, you send it over, you put it in response to the official document, and you send it in. So in a situation that could be, days, weeks, months of hassling with something as simple as the IRS lost that return, becomes a very non-event for all of our clients.
It is amazing how many things are like that.
Yeah.
For the most part, people are trying to do the right things and comply, and they try to provide accurate information, but things get lost.
Right.
Some mistake gets made along the way, and it has this whole trickle effect into into their operations and the challenges that if you're the business owner, and like a lot of us I think do, is I'll get to that later. I'm going to ignore that and wait for the second notice.
Right.
And that's when the things start to get a little more complicated. So our philosophy is to get out in front of those things.
Right. And those, yeah, you're right. Those things happen every day. We don't get notices for our clients every day, but everybody gets notices from the IRS, and they get notice from the state government or the local government that things weren't compliant or they misinterpreted what you sent in. And dealing with that and knowing how to deal with that is extremely important. And frankly, most small business owners don't have the training or the ability to deal with that effectively.
Yeah. And so they wait until the end of the year to deal with that.
Right.
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 It has to be dealt with as they're received.
Right. Yeah. There's a couple of ways that we'd love to interact with you. One, you can go out to our website, which is www.o-miga.com. And there's a contact us form out there. You can look at the benefits calculator, put in your information, and see what potential savings that you can have by utilizing our services. Or just pick up the phone and give us a call. We'd love to talk to you. Love to understand the situation you're in, what you're currently doing, what your concerns are, whether it be price or service or whatever. And love to talk to you, understand how we can serve you, and take it from there.
So another area that kind of differentiates us in our approach is that we've been talking a lot about fixing some of the compliance issues and the nuts and bolts in the administration, but our backgrounds are such that we have run businesses before, consulted with large organizations, and as much as those administrative things are important, and we know that as our core business, we're trying to take those off people's plates to make it go away, as we talk about in our name. That's only part of where we like to spend our time. Resolving those issues is one thing, but how we've tried to engage with our clients is to spend time with them each month or each quarter and really learn more about their business. I'm fascinated by the number of things that people are doing out there, the products people are creating, the new business models that are being created, or just the simple drive of new entrepreneurs that are trying to build a business for themselves, even in a very traditional industry. And I learned something in those discussions from every single one of them about their business and things that we can share with others in terms of the success. And those conversations, we try to be proactive on those a number of times throughout the year to understand a bit more about their business, let them know what our view is when we look at their numbers. Here's things that we think you can do better. And also, quite frankly, to learn a bit from them as well, because there's lots of great ideas out there that we can learn from and share. So,
I agree. I think one of the great benefits of our business is interacting with small business owners, entrepreneurs, people looking to change something in how they're viewing their product or service. And back in the day when we were doing big business consulting, we'd say we're going to learn we learn something from every client. We're either going to learn how to do something better or how not to do that again. But one of the things that, as we have these monthly or quarterly calls with our clients, is it's great to understand a different perspective. I mean, Ed and I have a certain perspective on how we interpret the numbers and how how those numbers speak to us and what those results mean. But understanding the motivation and the desire and the what that business owner is trying to do actually then creates another dialogue that says, well, another way to look at that might be, or another client that's faced with a similar challenge approached it this way. And so having that breadth across these businesses and across these industries really creates a valuable knowledge base that our company can lean on, and our service team has, that you know, we don't look at it and say, well, we're going to handle all bakeries this way or all manufacturing this way. I mean, we look across those industries and try to learn from those and you know, become a great small business or, you know, startup or whatever the case may be, not just the best, you know, financially sound baker there is. So I think that's a great benefit of our business because we have all these different industries.